This next one was sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Adam in London, England. I watched a YouTube video recently and had no idea that Bray Wyatt was a part of the Windham family tree. I was just wondering how many of the Windham and Rotunda clan Jim got to work with, and if looking back he remembers seeing a young Bray Wyatt with his father.
Well, no. Of course, he probably, when he was 12 or whatever, he didn't have the beard. I briefly worked with Blackjack Mulligan. When I first started watching wrestling, the Blackjacks, Mulligan and Lanza, managed by Bobby Heenan, were having their run in Indianapolis for Bruiser and got to see Bruiser and Crusher against that. And Blackjack Mulligan was the biggest motherfucker you've ever seen in your life. He was 6'9" and 330 pounds, and he covered the ground he walked on. And the promos were great, right? And then he eventually went to the Carolinas and became a top singles star. And Lanza shifted into the office job as an agent producer he had with the WWF. And Mulligan in the Carolinas they drew a ton of money. As a matter of fact, when finally they pulled the trigger on the Flair and Mulligan feud, Rick still talked about that, fondly years after. He loved Jack Mulligan as a person, and as an opponent, they drew tons of money. When we, being the Midnight and the Rock and Roll Express, sold out the Charlotte Coliseum for our first match there in '86, they actually told us it was the first legitimate sellout of the Charlotte Coliseum for wrestling since 1978, and Flair and Mulligan. And imagine how much territory that takes in, but he was hot. But I never got to be around Mulligan or even work in the same place with him, except for 3 weeks. God, we were just talking about it earlier when George Scott was Booker in WCW. One of the first things that he did, and I swear to God, this is not a rib, he hired Blackjack Mulligan to be one of the agents. Obviously, there was the Charlotte connection from years before, but he hired him and put him in that job because he had been told that a bunch of these high-priced wrestlers on contracts working for TBS now didn't want to do what they were told. So Blackjack Mulligan was the enforcer to make all of the wrestlers do the finishes that George Scott wanted them to do, which would have worked in the 60s and 70s. But now it was a billion-dollar television conglomerate owning the company. If he'd have beat anybody up, which he could, they would have sued. And I think he realized that and was there 3 weeks and did a couple of TV tapings. And then we never saw him again. So that's the only time I was around Jack Mulligan. Barry Windham, obviously his son, we had multiple programs with. Windham and Garvin for the U.S. Tag Team title. And Barry Windham with anybody or by himself, there was a period of time, 86, 87, he was the best babyface wrestler in the ring in the business. And just amazing for the size to be that fluid. Barry Windham was elite tier in anybody's book in his day. When he had gotten old enough that he had the experience and he got the size, but not too much size and too many injuries, he was the best in the business. And we worked with him forever. Mike Rotunda was a great amateur wrestler, obviously part of the varsity club, playing on that, went to Syracuse. Mike was a great guy. Loved having him in the heel locker room. He was never the main event guy, but he was a good worker, didn't have a fireball promo, but, was certainly a good talent. I'm trying to, who else is in now? Then Bray Wyatt's real name is Windham Rotunda because he is the son of Mike Rotunda and Barry's sister, correct? Jack's daughter.
Barry and Kendall's sister, yes.
Barry and Kendall. Well, I forgot about Kendall. Don't shoot me. Kendall was a nice guy, painfully thin. He was given a job in Crockett specifically by Dusty and because he was a Windham, and what a worker he was. He just was so he was thinner than Sam Houston. I used to do the fucking heel promos where I said, look at Kendall Windham. He looks like a Q-tip because he had the curly blonde hair. And the last time I saw him several years ago at one of these fan fests, he's as big now as Barry Windham was then in the ring when he was wrestling, like 250, 260. He finally got the weight, but he's too old to wrestle. But Kendall, yes, was around for a while. And then, I never met Bray Wyatt and didn't meet Bo is his brother. Bo Dallas was Bo Rotunda.
I believe so, yeah.
Never met him either.
And obviously,
what was the question?
the question was how many of the Windham family you had actually worked with.
Well, that I think we've illustrated all. Did we miss anybody? There was for whatever reason, people used to think that Winona Littleheart was Barry Windham's sister.
Oh, because they did an angle in Florida, right?
Oh, well, that's what it was. So people bought the angle. Okay, well, as far as I know, they weren't related. They may have had relations at some point, but they weren't related.